I wanted to cover this book here, do a quick book introduction. This book is called SCRUM for Hardware Design. SCRUM is the most common methodology of the so-called agile approach to design, okay, for designing new products, typically for designing new software products. However, it's also used more and more for hardware products, okay, which often include software, of course, but there's a lot of other things. It includes this nice overview here, so I want to go over it very quick. So there's a team of obviously design engineers and also testers, right? But also someone who represents the customer, often called the product owner, and someone who kind of manages the process, just makes sure the process runs fine, and who works on the obstacles, called the Scrum Master sometimes. There's some design goals, obviously very important, and there's a board, and a board typically looks like this. So all of this comes from the book. There's a lot of examples online, but this one is nice. So there's a backlog. Backlog means that these are ideas of often, let's say, features or improvements to the product or to the architecture of the product or things like this. Okay, and there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of things that correspond to the full product requirements, but they are not all released into the process right away, right? The process is time boxed. So depending on the companies, might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That's quite typical. Some companies go a bit longer, but 2 to 4 weeks. Companies just set it and say, okay, this is only what we can do within, for example, 3 weeks. Okay. They put these tasks here, tasks often called stories. Okay. And that's what they're doing. When it's done, it moves here little by little. Okay. And when they plan for the next sprint, then they say, okay, this sprint is going to include this major story and these like little tasks, this major story and these little tasks, and so on, right? And then as it gets in process of being done, it goes here, and after that it goes here. Okay, there's a lot of software such as Trello and some others that follow this kind of Kanban approach. Okay, so back to this whole framework. There's a board, and it's very important to manage what is going to get done. And the backlog, so all the future tasks to be done kept being groomed. Okay, as things evolve, then it informs the planning of what will need to be done later. That's important. Okay, then so there's this cycle again. For example, 3 weeks, and it's time boxed. It will not go over that. Okay, so there's a sprint planning meeting of a few hours where the team thinks of what to do next, and they prioritize some of the stories and tasks based on, for example, the amount of risk that they represent for the project. Do they cover an important assumption that needs to be tested, and so on and so forth. Okay, then things are sort of broken down into tasks, evaluated typically earlier, and then they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So they say, okay, for the next sprint, for the next 3 weeks, the next cycle, we're going to do this. All right. Then it goes into this cycle. So this lasts for, again, for example, about 3 weeks, and it will always be a cycle of 3 weeks. And there's a stand-up meeting, usually first thing in the morning, 10-15 minutes, just to make sure everybody knows what everybody's doing, what obstacles they went into, what they're planning to do today, just to eliminate a lot of the emails and communication later on. And then they just get to work, right? The team, which should be as stable as possible through the project, all right? And they create what's often called product artifacts. Okay, it's basically the deliverables. Okay, and the deliverables, okay, and they get tested and so on, right? And that's what they call deliver a value increment. So each cycle, okay, here will deliver as much as possible, sort of a new mini version of the product design. Okay, in software, it might be something new, like a new feature that can be shipped, can be delivered, that can be made available to users. In hardware, that's not really the case, but as much as possible, make it tangible. All right, and let's say after all of this has been done, they've been doing this daily. Okay, the sprint comes to an end, and it goes into a review process and a retrospective. Okay, and if you look at this plan, do, this is sort of study and adjust or check and act, right, in PDSA or PDCA. So this is a very logical approach that is not linear. It goes PDCA and PDCA and PDCA, right? This is very close to what Toyota and some other companies like this are doing in manufacturing, and a lot of other processes. But there's really a logic to that. You plan for what you're going to do, you do it, but then you need to learn from it and adjust your approach and keep going like this. As much as possible, also here in the review phase, there's got to be some user testing as much as possible. Maybe final users, or maybe the customer review it and give some feedback. And the big advantage of agile in general is that this feedback can be integrated into the backlog, what to do in the future, and into the big meeting at the beginning, okay, of the sprint to decide what to do and so on. So things are not set in stone, and this is what we're going to do for the next 6 months or 1 year or even longer. It keeps evolving based on the feedback from the final users, which is really very, very important when designing a new product, because there's always new things that appear, new complexities on the technical side, new challenges and so on, but also new feedback from the users as they start to see and interact with the product. So that was my very high level, very simple summary. I hope it was useful.